When I first tell people about this, I always start the same way. I swear to God, this happened to me. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't sleep paralysis. It wasn't just my imagination. I lived through this. It began in 2019, the summer after my lease ended, and I was desperate for a place that didn't bleed my bank account dry. A coworker told me about a small house at the end of Willow Lane, a quiet cul-de-sac just outside town. The rent was cheap. The place had 2 bedrooms, and the landlord didn't care about credit checks. It sounded like a dream. I signed the papers without even thinking twice. The first few days were uneventful. The house was old but charming. Creaky floors, peeling wallpaper, a faint smell of wood smoke that never really left. I didn't mind. It was mine. For the first time in years, I felt like I had space to breathe. The backyard opened into a stretch of woods, dense, silent, untouched. At night, the trees became a black wall and the cicadas hummed so loud it felt like they were inside my walls. The only weird thing about the house was the basement. The landlord warned me that the door swelled shut in summer humidity, so I probably wouldn't be able to use it until fall. I tried opening it once, but the old wood was jammed tight. Fine, I didn't need a basement anyway. At first, living there was peaceful. Too peaceful. I worked late shifts, so I'd get home after midnight, eat something quick, and crawl into bed. But within the first week, I started noticing little things that didn't sit right. The first was the sound. I woke up one night at around 3 a.m. to what I thought was scratching. At first, I assumed it was raccoons or mice in the walls, but the sound was rhythmic. Scratch, pause, scratch, pause. It came from the floor beneath me, the basement. I told myself it was pipes contracting, the house settling. Normal old house stuff, but the noise didn't stop. Every night that week, around 2:45 to 3:15 a.m., I'd hear the same steady scratching from below. One night, I banged on the floor with my heel. The scratching stopped immediately. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. Like whoever or whatever was down there was listening. The second thing was the smell. 2 weeks in, a rancid odor started seeping up from the basement door. It wasn't constant, but every so often the stench of rot would drift through the hallway. I complained to the landlord, who brushed it off. Probably a dead raccoon. Happens all the time in those woods. I'll check it next time I'm in town. But he never came. And the smell never left. Then there were the shadows. I worked nights, remember? So most evenings I'd get ready around 11:30 p.m. One night, while brushing my teeth, I caught movement in the mirror behind me. The hallway light flickered, and for just a second I thought I saw someone walk past the bathroom door. A man. Tall. Shoulders slumped. I spun around so fast my toothbrush clattered into the sink. The hallway was empty. The only sound was the faint scratching again, drifting up from below. I tried to laugh it off. Sleep deprivation, stress, I wasn't used to living alone. That had to be it. But things escalated. One night I came home to find the basement door standing wide open. I froze in the entryway, my keys slipping from my hand. The door had been swollen shut since I moved in. I'd never once gotten it open, and yet there it was, yawning like a black mouth into the floor. A wave of rot smell rolled up the stairs, gagging me. My stomach lurched. I slammed the door shut and wedged a chair beneath the handle. That night I didn't sleep. Every creak and groan of the house sent adrenaline through my veins. At exactly 3:07 a.m., I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, dragging footsteps coming from beneath me. I packed a bag and left before sunrise. For the next few days, I stayed at a friend's place. I didn't tell her the full truth. I said my plumbing broke and the landlord was dragging his feet. She believed me, but she gave me that look, the one that says you're hiding something. I thought maybe if I just avoided the house long enough, whatever was going on would stop, but avoiding the problem only made it worse. On the 4th night away, my friend shook me awake at 3 a.m. Her voice was sharp, panicked. "Why the hell are you standing in my hallway?" I bolted upright. "What?" She swore she'd seen me, or something that looked like me, standing outside her bedroom door. Just a figure, tall, shoulders slumped, silhouetted against the nightlight. I packed my bag and left her place too. Eventually, I went back to Willow Lane. I had no choice. I couldn't afford anywhere else. The house greeted me like a corpse. The smell was unbearable now, thick and clinging. I gagged as I carried my bags inside. The basement door was open again, chair pushed aside. I nearly turned and left, but stubbornness won out. I was done running, so I went down. The basement stairs groaned under my weight. My flashlight beam jittered over stone walls slick with damp. The air was colder than it should have been, bitter enough to sting my throat. At the bottom, I expected to see a dead animal, maybe even a nest of raccoons. But the floor was bare dirt, and in the center of the room was a single wooden chair. On it sat a tape recorder. My stomach flipped. I picked it up, my hands trembling, and pressed play. Static filled the air, then a voice. My voice. Scratch. Pause. Scratch. Pause. It repeated in a perfect loop, my voice mimicking the exact rhythm I'd been hearing every night. I dropped the recorder and bolted upstairs, slamming the basement door shut so hard the frame splintered. That night, I locked myself in my bedroom with a knife clutched to my chest. I didn't sleep. At 3:07 a.m., I heard footsteps again. But this time they weren't in the basement. They were in the hallway. The doorknob to my bedroom rattled. Slow. Deliberate. Then it stopped. Silence stretched on for what felt like hours until, finally, I heard whispering. My own voice just outside the door. Scratch. Pause. Scratch. Pause. I don't remember what happened after that. My mind blanks. All I know is that I woke up in my bed at sunrise, knife still in hand, basement door closed as if nothing happened. I left Willow Lane that day. I never went back. I don't know if the landlord ever rented it again. Sometimes I dream about it, though. I dream about the basement. I dream about myself sitting in that chair, whispering those words into the recorder. And sometimes when I wake up in the dead of night, I swear I can still hear it. Scratch. Pause. Scratch. Pause. I never thought a cheap road trip motel could ruin my life. It was the summer of 2021. I was driving across states for work, delivery routes, long nights, endless coffee. I was too cheap to splurge on nice hotels, so I stuck to whatever roadside place had a vacancy sign buzzing in neon. Most of them were dumps, sure, but I'd learned to live with cigarette burns and blankets and stained carpets. That night, after 10 hours on the road, I pulled into a place called Silver Pines Lodge. The sign flickered like it was dying, and the parking lot was half empty, but I was exhausted. I just needed a bed. The receptionist barely looked at me when I checked in. She was an older woman with thick glasses, muttering as she slid me the key. Room 6, no smoking inside. Check out at 10. Thanks, I said, forcing a smile. Her eyes lingered on me for a second too long. Not friendly. Not welcoming, just watching. Room 6 was on the far end of the motel, tucked away from the road. The door stuck when I pushed it open and a musty smell rolled out. Mold, maybe, the kind of smell that sticks to your skin. Inside it was the usual, yellow lamp, faded bedspread, buzzing mini-fridge. But something about the room felt off. The air was too heavy, too quiet, like the space itself was holding its breath. I tried to brush it off. I dropped my duffel on the chair, kicked off my shoes, and flopped onto the bed. My eyes closed before I could think twice. That's when the knocking started. It was soft at first. 3 slow taps on the wall behind the bed. I jolted awake, heart hammering. My eyes darted around. No one outside, no voices, nothing. Just the stale silence of the room. I pressed my ear against the wall. Maybe it was a neighbor, but the motel seemed practically empty. 3 more taps. This time I was sure it came from inside the wall. I told myself it was plumbing, or maybe a raccoon in the crawl space. But the rhythm, it was deliberate, slow, patient, waiting for me to react. I turned on the TV for background noise and tried to drown it out. Eventually I drifted off again. The second time I woke, it wasn't from knocking, it was breathing. I froze. My body locked in place. In the dark room I could hear it. Ragged, heavy breathing just a few feet away from the bed. My eyes adjusted to the faint glow from the TV, and that's when I saw it. Someone was standing in the corner, a tall, shadowed figure, shoulders hunched, face hidden, just standing there, swaying slightly, breathing like every inhale hurt. I opened my mouth to scream, but nothing came out. My body refused to move. I blinked once, twice, gone. The corner was empty. I sat up, drenched in sweat, convincing myself I was dreaming. Hallucinating from exhaustion. That had to be it, but then I noticed the smell. A sharp, Sour stench filled the room, like meat left out in the sun too long. I barely slept the rest of the night. By morning, I packed my bag and went straight to the receptionist. My hands shook as I dropped the key on the counter. "Was anyone in room 5 last night?" I asked. She looked at me strangely. "Room 5 is empty." I hesitated, then pushed further. "Has anyone ever complained about noises in room 6? Her face hardened. She didn't answer, just pushed the receipt toward me and said, "Checkout is final." I left, trying to convince myself it was all in my head. A bad dream, sleep paralysis, whatever. But it didn't stop. For the next 2 nights, no matter which motel I stayed at, I woke at 3:15 a.m. to the sound of that same breathing, slow, ragged, right beside the bed. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of the figure in the corner, swaying, waiting. Always gone when I looked too long. By the 5th night, I couldn't take it anymore. I called Silver Pines Lodge from the road. The same receptionist answered. "Listen," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What the hell is wrong with room 6? I keep seeing, hearing things, and I need to know if someone else..." She cut me off, voice sharp. "You should not have stayed in there." The line went dead. I drove in silence for hours, her words echoing in my head. That night, I pulled into another nameless motel, too exhausted to keep driving. I told myself I'd keep the lights on, stay awake, prove it was just in my head. But at 3:15 a.m., the bulb above me flickered and went out. The breathing started again. Closer this time. Right at the foot of the bed. When I dared to look, I didn't just see the figure in the corner. I saw it crouched on the floor, its face inches from mine. And for the first time, I realized it wasn't just a shadow. It had eyes, milky, dead, watching me. I don't remember what happened after that. When I woke up, it was morning. The room smelled sour, and my chest ached like someone had pressed down on it all night. I never went back to Silver Pines Lodge. But the thing from room 6, it never stopped following me. Even now, some nights I wake up at 3:15 sharp, heart pounding, lungs burning, and I swear I can hear it breathing in the corner of my room, waiting. People always laugh when I tell them I used to work security at an abandoned hospital. They think it sounds like a movie setup, and I guess it does, but it was a real job, real paycheck. And what I saw there, real enough to haunt me every night since. The place was called Riverside Memorial Hospital, shut down in the late 90s after a fire gutted one of the wings. The company that owned it never tore it down, just slapped plywood over the broken windows and put a fence around the lot. My job was simple. Sit in the lobby, make sure no vandals or kids broke in. I worked nights, of course. Midnight to 6, the hours nobody else wanted. The first couple of weeks were boring. I'd sit at my little desk with a thermos of coffee, scrolling my phone, listening to the building creak around me. Every so often I'd make rounds, flashlight in hand, boots echoing through the empty hallways. The hospital smelled like rot and bleach, like a place that had been sick for too long. The worst part was the silence. Hospitals are supposed to be noisy, monitors beeping, nurses talking, wheels squeaking on tile. But this place had nothing. Just the hum of distant pipes and the occasional flap of plastic sheeting where the fire damage was never repaired. I could deal with silence. What I couldn't deal with were the noises that weren't supposed to be there. The first time I heard them, it was around 2:30 a.m. A faint squeak echoed down the hallway, like rubber soles on tile, footsteps. I froze, flashlight shaking in my grip. "Hello?" I called, no answer. I walked the corridor, light cutting through peeling wallpaper and rust-stained ceiling tiles. The sound stopped. I told myself it was water dripping or rats, but deep down, I knew what footsteps sound like. After that, the nights got worse. The footsteps returned every shift, always around the same time. Sometimes they followed behind me as I walked my rounds. Other times they circled me just out of sight, squeaking on the tile. I started carrying my radio everywhere, even though I knew nobody would come if I called. Nobody wanted to step foot in Riverside at night. Then came the voices, soft at first. Whispers curling through the hallways like smoke. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable, pleading. Sometimes it sounded like a woman crying, sometimes like a man chanting, always drifting from just around the corner, always pulling me deeper into the hospital. One night I followed. Against my better judgment, I let the sound lead me. Past the broken elevators, past the fire-damaged wing into a section of the hospital I'd never explored before. Room numbers peeled from the doors. The smell of ash lingered thick in the air. My flashlight caught a wheelchair in the middle of the hall, facing the wrong direction. The whispers grew louder. When I reached the end of the corridor, I found the source, room 413. The door hung crooked on its hinges. Half burned, half charred, I pushed it open. Inside, the walls were black with smoke. The floor was littered with broken glass, and on the far side of the room was a hospital bed. Someone was lying in it. At first, I thought it was a squatter, but when my light fell across the bed, my breath caught in my throat. The figure was skeletal, skin shriveled tight against bone, lips peeled back in a frozen scream, eyes milky white. It was a corpse, but it moved. Its chest rose, fell, shallow, struggling. I dropped my flashlight. By the time I scrambled to pick it up, the bed was empty. Sheets stripped bare, mattress burned through. The whispers were gone. I didn't finish my rounds that night. After that, the hospital felt different, like it knew I'd seen too much. The shadows moved when I wasn't looking. Doors creaked open on their own. My radio crackled with static that sometimes sounded like voices. But the worst was the basement. I never liked going down there. The stairs were rusted, the air heavy with mildew. It felt wrong, but protocol said I had to check it once a night. The first time I saw the light, I nearly quit. It was faint, flickering from the far corner of the basement, like someone holding a candle. I crept closer, every nerve in my body screaming. The concrete walls were damp, graffiti smeared across them. The air was freezing. As I rounded the corner, the light winked out, but not before I saw a face in the glow. Hollow eyes, mouth gaping, skin blackened from fire, and then it was gone. I told my supervisor the next morning that I was done. No more night shifts at Riverside. He laughed, called me superstitious, said I was letting my imagination get the best of me. So I stayed, because I needed the money. That decision still keeps me up at night. My last shift was in November. Cold wind rattled the plywood on the windows. The hospital felt emptier than usual, like even the building was holding its breath. Around 3 a.m., I heard the footsteps again. Only this time they weren't distant. They were in the lobby. With me. I spun around, flashlight beam cutting across the room. Empty. The footsteps came again, closer. I backed toward the desk, my hands shaking. Who's there? The shadows shifted, and then one by one, figures began to step out of the dark. Patients, or what was left of them. Burned skin. Bandaged faces. Hollow eyes staring at me with bottomless hunger. They shuffled closer, filling the lobby, silent except for the squeak of their ruined shoes. I stumbled back until my legs hit the desk. Nowhere left to go. That's when I heard it, the whisper. Right behind me. Stay. I ran. I don't remember how I got out. Don't remember unlocking the gate or reaching my car. All I remember is the sound of those footsteps chasing me across the parking lot. I quit the next morning. The hospital's still there, rotting at the edge of town. Sometimes I drive past and see the plywood rattling in the wind, but I'll never go back inside. Because every time I close my eyes, I see them waiting for me. And I know if I ever step through those doors again, I won't come back out.